What's up, guys? Derek, moreplates.com. Today we're going to be doing a natty or not on Josef Rakich. So I'm sure you've probably seen this guy before. He's a real OG fitness social media influencer, and in more recent years, his physique seems to have gotten, a bit more juicy looking, and it starts to beg the question, is this guy natty or not? So you might already be familiar with Josef Rakich, but if you're not, he's kind of one of the OG fitness influencers from way back in the day. And, a lot of people, they might not even be aware that they're aware of who he is. But this is one of the guys that was, in that kind of, I'd say during the catalyst phase of the fitness industry where it kind of took off. He was a very prominent influencer at that time, and that was when there was very few influencers in this kind of niche. And I actually remembered this, or it was posted in 2011. I remember this video the most prominently of any of his content. I saw this when, I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen this too, when you're coming up into just getting into this kind of stuff. I saw some of Ziz's content, as well as I think Jeff's side as well when I was in high school. And then I saw this video in particular of Josef Rakich, and I remember thinking, man, this guy's abs are fucking ridiculous. And yeah, to this day, I still think he has very insane genetic ab inserts. It's not like he was overly built or anything crazy muscular at the time, but to me, back in the day when you're a rail, this looks like the pinnacle of physiques. And he's decently has some muscle on him and just insane cuts and sick ab genetics. And it's kind of like something you remember when you were a kid in high school first getting into this stuff. And I remember this, they were getting some chicks to rub sunscreen on his abs or something. And I just remember seeing, it's funny because I remember this clip, he was 220 pounds in this clip, but he was probably 170 here. But just the skewed perception you have when you're a kid just getting into this stuff. And this is one of the catalyst clips that got me into fitness. And I remember it clear as day. And going through some of his content, just he's obviously a big name in the industry now and has progressed his physique a lot since this point. And as you can see here, he's probably, I don't know what his stats were, maybe 170, 8-9% body fat, chiseled features, a very good, I would say probably natural at this point. And moving forward though, it's where things take a turn in terms of what I believe was achievable naturally for him. So moving forward, you can see, I remember this clip too from Simply Shredded. This was around the same time in high school. This is some heavy motivational shit right here. I always remember it was if you got picked for an interview with Simply Shredded back in the day, it was these guys were seen as okay, you're gonna be an icon in the industry basically if you were in a Simply Shredded interview back in 2010, 2011. And yeah, insane physique by natural standards. Obviously I wasn't in the mindset of what's this guy's physique look like in bodybuilding standards back then. This is the pinnacle back then. And he obviously started posting more content. This was him a couple years later, I guess, and a bit more muscle on his frame here. Nothing incredibly substantial, but definitely progression. If you go look at his body space on bodybuilding.com, I don't know if you guys remember body space. It's where you'd post your progression. It was almost I don't know, Facebook, but for bodybuilding. And this picture before hitting the gym, so this was 2007, 2008. And then, oh, I guess he has several of these actually. So these were way back in, this is way back, damn. Okay, so he hadn't even started lifting at this point, 2007, 2008. And then jumping to, let's see here, all of a sudden 2010, obviously he has good inserts. I'm not going to argue with the fact that this is possible naturally for sure. Like I said before, good ab inserts, good kind of just muscle bellies in general for having an aesthetic physique. Good, chest inserts. He's got some somewhat rounded delts here, small waist. Keep going through his progression here. So this is still 2010. I'm going to click the album so I can scroll down a bit further. And getting to 2012, I guess, was his last photos he posted on bodybuilding.com. And I'd say this is about where he peaked before making the transition to unnatural territory. And I believe he basically took the plunge into anabolics around this time. So it only takes, you know, if you're a natural, you can argue how many years you can milk gains as a natural. But I think if you have a perfect diet and training regimen, within probably, you know, like 3 to 4 years, you're probably going to be at the point of diminishing returns, or, you know, severely diminishing returns where you're only milking maybe a pound a year of muscle mass at most. And maybe that's a bit exaggerated. Maybe you can milk a bit more than that over the next coming years. But in general, I think 80 to 90% of your physique progression as a natural is going to come in the first, you know, 2 to 3 years that you have a perfect diet and training regimen in place. And I guess just assuming he knew what he was doing from day one, I'd say he probably peaked around shortly thereafter the Simply Shredded interviews as a natural. And moving forward, if you look at him in current day, you go on his Instagram, the guy, it's not like he has a physique that you would think, okay, there's no fucking way he's not natural. Like it's not like he's massive by any means. However, there are a few flagship differences that I want to point out that really kind of tip my radar. One of those is obviously if you look at just how much muscle he's gained in general. That's the first thing. He's probably gained what looks to be 20 more pounds of muscle since these images in 2012. At least that would be my guess in terms of what he's gained since he kind of, what I would think peaked as a natural back in maybe closer to 2011 in the shortly thereafter the Simply Shredded interviews. And one of the most, you know, biggest tip-offs to me is the face. Now, a lot of people are going to be like, well, what's that mean? Like, what's the face have to do with anything? The thing is look how lean he is and look at his face compared to before. When he was shredded in these Simply Shredded videos and these, you know, the sunscreen video, his face is chiseled, and like, I'm not saying he's not lean now, but there's a very blatant bloat look the face takes on when you're on anabolics that can't necessarily be mitigated just by getting lean. Like here, he's whatever, 8% body fat, something like that. And then here in current day, what is he? Maybe 10% body fat with more muscle mass, 10% or something like that. But look at the difference in his face. The difference in his face is literally night and day in terms of the bulk. So to me, that's usually the flagship thing that I look for in terms of a guy who's bulked up with anabolics. I don't know if you've seen my video on the difference between bodybuilders' faces before and after gaining significant amounts of muscle with PEDs and the difference it makes on literally bulking up your face. And this is a red flag example of that, in my opinion. I'm not hating on the guy. I'm just saying, to me, this is a red flag of somebody who's on gear. And you see just at least 20 pounds heavier, just as lean, or appears to be as lean due to the fact that he has way more muscle mass. He's probably holding a bit more fat for sure, but at the same time, the guy's extremely well conditioned year round, big, full, definitely much bigger than he was in 2011, 2012 after already being committed to 4 to 5 years of natural lifting. And he stays shredded year round. He has, you know, very like near striking distance of competition ready levels of body fat year round, crazy vascular while maintaining fullness. And that's one of the flagship things as well. Like here, you can see he's very shredded, but he's not big by any means. Like these guys that are naturals, it's harder to retain your tissue as you lean down, and getting a full big look while being simultaneously really shredded is very difficult to do without top tier genetics. And even if you have top tier genetics, you're not going to get the same look just simply because you're not going to have as much muscle mass and you can't retain the same amount of nitrogen in the muscle belly. And when you look at him, again, going back to him in current day, the guy's just near diced year round, very full, and has that bloated face look despite being 9% body fat. Like to me, this is just a flagship marker of anabolics. Traps and the delts are a lot more developed. You know, obviously everyone wants to jump to the androgen receptor hypothesis and the AR density in the delts. I've discussed this before as well and related it to myself, and I think, you know, it's fair to make a speculation that that may be applicable to him as well. And you can see here, just I don't think there's even a you know, an argument as to if this guy jumped on the ship or not, because it's just night and day difference between his physique back then to now, and you can't really chalk that up to another like 8 years of natural bodybuilding, in my opinion, because your face just doesn't take on this look when you're natural and you've gained muscle. Like that bloated look is brought on by aromatizing drugs, typically test, and intramuscular retention of not just water, but just as you gain muscle and size in general, you gain tissue everywhere. And the face is the dead giveaway, as well as the sustaining a full, way bigger physique with nearly the same levels of body fat, you know, relative to what you've seen before. So I would guess that he is not Natty. And that is just my educated guess based on what I know and what how I relate to my own experience. And do I think his physique is achievable Natty? Yeah, for sure. I just don't think that he's Natty himself. I think that he obviously has good genetics in terms of muscle inserts, but as far as like hyper response to anabolics, I don't think he has that. I think that he took the plunge probably sometime 2012, 2013 or so, and he's probably been, you know, cruising or on TRT ever since. I don't know if he's elaborated on this before or touched on it. And if he has, then it's probably, you know, I should have found that, but I couldn't find it. I tried to find it first, but perhaps he has touched on this in the past, and I'm just going out on a limb and making a guess here without having heard him in his opinion first, but that's what I would guess based on seeing this guy since, you know, way back in the day. I've been following this guy, not like closely, but just I've seen his content from when I was in high school, even before I lifted, and just seeing him and his progression and relating it to myself and knowing that I started a similar body fat and sort of had a similar outcome in terms of, especially in the face too. Like, to me, the face is the dead giveaway in terms of, you could argue with everything else, but when it comes to the face, you just don't get that kind of round look unless you're on gear when you're that lean, in my opinion, especially when you were much leaner before in the face to begin with. So that's just my speculation though. Take from that what you will. If you guys have a different opinion, or let me know what you guys think in the video, in the comments down below. Interested to hear your guys' take on it, because this is a guy who's probably, you know, borderline. You could make an argument for both ways, and, you know, I could be wrong. Maybe he's totally natural and he just gained another, I don't know, 15 pounds over the next 8 years of lean tissue, but I don't believe that to be the case. I think most guys, once they're like, this guy's literal life is bodybuilding and having a great physique. So I think he was probably pretty dialed in from the beginning, and, you know, very strict on his workout regimen, not skipping days, not wasting opportunities to grow. And he's probably been very dedicated since, you know, day one, because this is how he makes his living and he markets his physique to sell his programs. So I think he probably peaked naturally within, you know, 4 years or so, 5 years maybe max. And at that point, you're kind of looking at the realm of anabolics, unless you want to milk out another like 1 to 2% per year as a natural, at least. At the end of the day, you have to keep in mind this is all relative to individual genetics. So what one guy plateaus at naturally could be, you know, what another guy plateaus at on gear, and what he looks like. Like, everything comes down to where you think this guy's genetics can take him naturally with his own endogenous androgen secretion, and what kind of amount of muscle that can support at the end of the day, and then where that line is drawn, where, okay, this guy took the plunge because his body can no longer support any additional growth. Because there are a lot of guys who, you know, they'll plateau and jump on gear like and look like nothing compared to guys who look like they're sauced even when they're not sauced, and then when they take the plunge, they blow up and become IFBB Pro Mr. Olympia competitors. So there's a vast difference in genetic response that needs to be taken into account, and individual genetic propensity to just responding to training, diet, and androgen response in general of exogenous hormones. So anyways, thank you guys for watching. Please like, subscribe, check out my blog, moreplatesmoredates.com. Drop a comment, helps the algorithm, and I appreciate it when you guys do that. Check out Josef Rakich. He actually has, you know, decent content, and I don't want this whole video to be just like calling him out or something like that. The guy obviously has a great physique, knows what he's doing, I'm assuming, so it might be worth checking out some of his stuff. And he's obviously an OG influencer and has been around the block for a while, so might be worth checking out his stuff. So thank you guys for watching. Talk to you soon.